I came here to do two things: to read a story to the audience, which I did, and to do an event with a Hungarian novelist whose name I'm going to really mispronounce, but I call him Laszlo Krasznahorkai. But I know that he doesn't say the Krasznahorkai part as beautifully as I do, but he says it absolutely correctly. I was reading a story from the collection The Empty Family. The story is called Two Women, and then I was trying to explain it because it's really, the audience always wants to know, what did you mean? And I realized as I was reading it out loud, I've read it a few times out loud, that there's a phrase repeated twice and then varied a third time, which simply says, he talked about you. And they're two old women, and they've both been in love with the same man, and one of them just says to the other, in an English accent, he talked about you. And in reading that out loud, I realized that I could get a huge amount of emotion around that phrase, which really you shouldn't be able to do anymore. He talked about you should be dull, dead, down. But actually, because it was the only thing she said about the lover, who had been both their lovers, he talked about you. And the other woman really listens to this. So it all builds up to me having to say that and see if the audience can get it. So it's a question of reading it properly and trying to answer the question seriously. And there was a good audience. I mean, it's always a great audience here. There's a phrase in the story, because I'm talking about filmmaking, and the idea that if you use a real location, it really doesn't work. Whereas if you build a location, you just have to, if you want a pub, you suggest pubness by putting in, one piece of draft beer or some bottles. But if you go into a real pub, there's clutter, you have to remove things, and often the lights don't work against things that are gone grimy. So in the story, I have the designer saying, look, often in setting, in dressing a set, very little can stand for a lot, whereas in life there's too much. And I did realize when the story was finished that you could say about something like Hemingway, that a simple sentence that seems to be doing very little can actually, if the right emotion is behind it, do a lot. I suppose if you're writing a novel, you have to be alert to other things other than spareness, psychology, and everything hinging on a single moment. That you really do have to have something, however grudgingly put in, about society, or some background, or details that don't really matter but seem to add flavour or add something to the characters. So you do that in a novel in a way that in a story you really can't do. There was a lot of demand in Ireland during the boom as, where's your boom novel? And I said, well, I'm not even sure that this boom is an invention. A lot of things seem to be quite the same in the way they're going on, and that you're always looking for underlying patterns rather than sort of surface glitter in how things move in a society. And so now that Ireland, it's 4 years crashed, it's still very hard for me to place a character in that yet. I'm afraid the novel that I'm writing, I started writing it in 2000, and it's set in between 1967 and 1970. And I can't change those years just because there's booms or busts or, Libya or Gaddafi or Tripoli or the Arab Spring. I can't do anything about that because it's set in the past. So it's one of the advantages of writing those sort of novels that that are not set. I mean, Henry James said novels should be set in the immediate future, but I can't see I can't even see last week, let alone the immediate future. There'll be no crash novel for at least 20 years until I understand was there one or what it meant. That doesn't mean as a citizen I'm not in a complete rage, but that's a different matter. Pleasure is swimming in Mallorca in August on a beautiful evening when it's 9 o'clock and the sun hasn't gone down yet and the beach is empty and you're going to a beautiful dinner later on. That's called pleasure. Writing is not pleasure. It's just not. And you're pulling things up from the depths of memory and feeling that really should be left alone, that most people leave them alone for very good reasons. They should be left alone. And you're using, because a novel is 1,000 details, you find those details from the strangest places. And the imagination is haunted house. And it doesn't matter whether you're writing down the first time or rewriting. You're working with that all the time, and that is not pleasure, and maybe some people get pleasure from it, but I would call it pain. I suppose some people get pleasure from pain. Reading is pleasure, and finding something that you like when you're reading is pure pleasure. So, oh, that's great. Oh, yeah, that's pure excitement. Yeah. Oh no, Tusker Rock is like it's a middle-aged man's fun.